great. Well, welcome everyone. My name's Janine Cohn, and I actually am with the Minnesota DNR, but today I'm your host, and I'm super excited. I'd like to introduce my two friends and colleagues that work at the National Park, the St. Croix River National River Scenic Way. I don't know the whole name of it. That's your job. It's a big name. But they're going to talk about the magnificent river. And if you have some questions, please shoot them in the chat, or you can put them in the Q&A. And then I'll be monitoring that, gentlemen. So then I may interject and ask a couple questions when appropriate, but then we may save some of them for the very end, if that's okay with you. Okay?
Absolutely.
All righty. And I'm gonna everyone, hi. And then I'm just going to zoom out and I'll let you guys be front and center. All righty.
Great. Good. Thank you, Janine.
Okay.
Good.
Yes. Hello.
Take it away.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Welcome all of you. My name is Ranger Dan, and next to me,
I am Ranger Dale. We're park rangers with your National Park Service. I have worked for the National Park Service for almost 30 years. Dan?
Golly. I've been with the National Park Service for close to 20 years. And yeah, definitely such a beautiful place and a great agency to work for.
So a lot of people are surprised when we start talking about being park rangers, especially in this area. We're going to tell you about a national park area that is in your own backyard and you may not have even known about it. And it's a gift. This is a park that has been in existence for over 50 years. And in that time, a lot of people, I think, realize how special it is, but they don't understand the significance and why it was created. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the National Park Service, this specific park, what you can do here, and how you can help to be stewards of this park in the future. And I think it's great that it's Earth Day and we have this opportunity to share this with you. So bear with us. We're going to change the screen on you for just a second. And hopefully, Gene, you can let us know if it's not showing, but oh, there you go. And
it's showing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hide that, maybe.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, so Dale was referencing this as a national park. And if you hear that word national park, especially maybe the word park, what kind of things come in mind? Well, probably green spaces, playgrounds, picnic tables, maybe baseball fields, or people. And definitely, we are probably familiar with parks in our communities, in towns and cities. We have county parks, we have state parks, and they all have different kinds of different treasures that are found inside of the different stories and lots of places to hike and camp. Well, when we talk about national parks, these are our nation's parks. So it's very, very similar to your community and county parks or state parks, but these are on a national scale. So when you see national, we're looking at we're looking at parks of our nation. And so here's a map of the United States, and we have 62 national parks. Basically, it's the names of these places with the word national park in their title. So if we go way over to, so here we are. Oh, here's the mouse. So if we're over here in Wisconsin, Minnesota area, so let's go out west. And we'll go over here past Wyoming. Well, look, there's Yellowstone National Park up here, and up in the northwestern corner of Wyoming. Yellowstone National Park. A lot of people may know about Yellowstone of its geysers. Maybe going out to Oregon, there's a place just in the southern end of it known as Crater Lake National Park. And Crater Lake is an old volcano that blew its top. It's the nation's deepest lake. And so you have lots of them scattered around this country of ours, these national parks. And they all have different characteristics. But you know, this for the National Park Service, we have a logo and this arrowhead. Just looking at the shape of this arrowhead, representing the cultural stories that are found in our national park. We have trees and mountains and forests and lakes, mountains. And there's animal life. So this, whenever you see this logo, it's of the national park system, and and definitely our national parks have a variety of things.
So I'm going to give this back to Dan.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Dale. So, right, we were talking about the logo for the National Park Service, and getting back to our map of the United States. We're looking at we've got 62 national parks, but we have within our national park system a number of other parks that don't necessarily have the word national park in their name. So, for instance, if we go out to Nebraska, way over here in the western part of Nebraska, we have a place known as Niobrara National Scenic River. Wow, it certainly doesn't have national park in its name, but it's recognizing it's a national river. If we head up to Wisconsin, way up here, maybe some of you are familiar with Apostle Islands National Lakeshore on Lake Superior. Well, it's a national lakeshore. So we have a number of our national park units that are either national battlefields, national historic sites, national monuments. Well, getting right over here to Wisconsin and Minnesota, we have what is known as St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. And here again, you can see the word national right in the title of that, and there's our logo. The St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. It's composed of two rivers, primarily the St. Croix River. So here you can see the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, and we have the Namekagon River. The Namekagon is a tributary to the St. Croix River, and the St. Croix flows all the way down to the Mississippi River. Well, you can see this kind of outline shape out here. Well, that's indicating the St. Croix River watershed. And a watershed is basically an area where there's all these streams and creeks and rivers and tributaries that funnel into a main body of water. And so this is part of a huge watershed. So maybe some of you that are in the audience, if you're from Wisconsin, Minnesota, maybe you know, maybe recognize some of these county names that are in here. But getting back to Wisconsin and Minnesota, we are broadcasting here today from St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. Now, this is where I work, out at the Visitor Center, at the St. Croix River Visitor Center. Dale, he's up here at Trigo, Wisconsin, at the Namekagon River Visitor Center. So just kind of looking around here in the state of Wisconsin, maybe some of you that are in the audience, maybe you're from Spooner or Minot, or if you're in Minnesota, it might be Hinckley. But this river system, the Namekagon and the St. Croix River, 230 miles long, and it is a very impressive river system that we have here.
So I mentioned earlier, I guess I'm not really ever surprised by it, but there's so many people that live really close to the St. Croix River and the Namekagon River that don't realize it is part of your national park system. And why that is because of its unique history, its mix of natural resources, cultural resources, geology, incredible wildlife. If we look at the history of this area, Native people used the rivers for hundreds of years prior to European contact and settlement. The rivers were the highways that they used to get around. The Ojibwe and the Lakota people primarily when Europeans first made contact and started trading. When European settlers finally came into the area, they came here originally for the wealth of the forest, the logs. This is a photograph of the St. Croix River near Taylor's Falls, Minnesota, St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, in 1884. This is a log jam that blocked up the river for around 57 days that year. Lumber companies would send men into the woods for the winter to cut white pine trees. They would dump these into the rivers in the spring when snow melt would cause the rivers to rise, and they were shipped downstream. I think kind of like a cattle drive, but this is a log drive that took logs to Stillwater, Minnesota, where sawmills were located. And every year these log jams would occur on the St. Croix River. This is a place that some of you may know. This is the Interstate State Parks near Taylor's Falls and St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. This is the Dalles of the river, where the river passes through a narrow rocky gorge. This is the same log jam that you saw a picture of earlier. What's really interesting, if you kind of zoom in here, you can actually see lumberjacks, river rats, trying to open up this log jam. This will give you some idea of the actual size of this. It backed up the river over 2 miles. Log jams like this occurred year after year on the St. Croix, so much so that even as the lumber industry was starting to decline, they were wiping out all of the white pines and shipping them off. Tourists began coming up the river to see these log jams. They would come up by steamboat. This is actually a steamboat pushing a barge loaded with people, and it became a recreational thing to do. Come up the St. Croix River from the Twin Cities and see these massive log jams every summer. Eventually, the log drives started ending. There were no more white pines to ship downriver, and recreation really became the main economy of the area. Tourism, coming out and seeing the scenic beauty of the St. Croix and also the Namekagon Rivers. It became such an event that large parties were held in certain areas celebrating how beautiful this was. A group of people actually formed called the St. Croix River Association that promoted the river as a great place to recreate. Eventually, by the 1930s, 1940s, people began building small cabins and cottages up and down the St. Croix and Namekagon. And the fishery, fishing for sport, became a very popular activity. This has always been a world-class fishery. But the people in the U.S. started noticing by the 1950s and 1960s, we were having issues with our rivers. They were becoming heavily polluted. This is a picture of the Hudson River in New York State in the mid-1960s. It's the first time the government stepped in and said, we need to clean these places up. And if you think about it back then, there were no restrictions on what you can put on the rivers. People would just dump motor oil. They would dump garbage and trash. There were no wastewater treatment systems. So everything from sewer water, from homes to factory water were dumped in our nation's rivers. So much so that there were rivers that were catching fire because they were so polluted. This was not just in places like Ohio or New York. It was in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Places that had just been taken for granted were now becoming so unclean people could not even fish or recreate on them. There were 2 senators at the time from the states of Minnesota and Wisconsin that co-authored a law called the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, intended to protect certain rivers of our country for future generations. Gaylord Nelson from Wisconsin and Senator Walter Mondale from Minnesota wrote this law, which was actually passed in 1968, creating the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway as one of the first 8 wild and scenic rivers. And the law itself states that there are certain rivers that have such outstanding, remarkable scenic, recreational, geologic, fish and wildlife, historic, and cultural values that they need to be preserved for the enjoyment of present and future generations. And if you think about it, that's over 50 years ago. And they were talking about you guys when they were talking about future generations. They had the vision to actually say, we need to protect these places so that kids 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, our youth have a place to go out and enjoy our rivers.
So today we've got this beautiful stretch of river known as the St. Croix and the Namekagon River, known as the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. And thanks to the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act of 1968, it provided a great place for people to come back to experience what the river was once like. And also just to see the variety of life that exists. Looking at those pictures that we had earlier, you know, Dale was showing about the oil going into rivers, how it was destroying life. You can't have that kind of activity when you in a system like this. Our rivers today are actually one of the cleanest in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest. And this is evident of the amount of fish that are found in these rivers, but also one particular organism known as a mussel, freshwater mussel. There are 40 species of them that live within the riverway. These are indicator species. If the water or the habitat, if the habitat doesn't, what am I trying to say now? If an animal, if you've got,
let me jump in here. If the water becomes so polluted, species like mussels can't survive. They're what's called an indicator species. If water quality, how the health of the water starts to decline, this species will start to die off. So if our water quality is not as good as it once was, we'll start to lose these species. The St. Croix today, as Dan said, is home to over 40 freshwater mussel species, 5 of which are federally endangered. There's so few of them that the federal government now says that they have to be protected at all costs.
Thank you. Yeah, so definitely we have a variety of insect life that call the river its home. Great sources of food for the aquatic turtles that are in the area, from maps and painted turtles. Amphibians, great place as far as, again, these are just great indicators that life can exist when the habitat is good. Waterfowl and birds, great blue herons and others nesting in colonies in the area. Warblers, as they're now approaching this time of year and entering what we call neotropical migrants, these birds that have spent their winters down in Central and South America, they're making their way up to their nesting grounds, and they're passing through. But we also have the American bald eagle and a number of eagle nests, eagles occupying along the riverway, and the nests right now with eaglets, young birds in their nests. And mammals, white-tailed deer, as well as coyote, fox, and wolf occur in the riverway. But, you know, getting to the river itself, it's really truly an amazing stretch of water. Thinking again of the high quality of water that's here in the upper Midwest, a place that people do come here just as in years past, drawn to the beauty, drawn to the scenic qualities. Although there is evidence of past activities like lumbering, things that are evidence that are still found on the rivers, it is still a place that people can come out and relax and enjoy the green spaces, just like going to a county or state park, or even at your community park. You have these green spaces. People can go out and
Gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
You know, Ren had a question for you before we moved on. You know, what's the coolest or your favorite animal that you've seen on the river?
Well, Dan,
Wow.
good question.
Yeah, for sure. The coolest animal, I have to say, is the river otter.
Mhm.
The river otter, such a unique animal that depends on good quality water, especially for being a carnivore, an animal that feeds on other animals. But yeah, the river otter, that's a great animal. Sir, how about you, Dale?
I always have to say a bald eagle, and I say that because bald eagles almost became extinct in the 1950s, early 1960s. We almost lost our bald eagle population in North America, and there are so many bald eagles on the St. Croix and Namekagon that I have never spent a day on the river and not seen at least one. And I'm the kind of person that when I see one, I always take the time to stop and think about the fact that they recovered from the brink of extinction. And it was because of environmental laws and protection in the 1960s that they were able to make this comeback. And at the same time, the St. Croix and Namekagon were being protected. Can you jump in? Sure.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
About eagles, I totally have to agree with you, Dale, because last year at the beginning of COVID, when we started working from home, I had an eagle, because I live about a block from the river, come up and land in my backyard tree, and he brought his lunch with him, and he sat and ate a fish in our backyard. And that same eagle visited the same month this year with another fish.
Yeah. They
are so special.
They're animals of habit.
Nice.
So, Janine, how much time do we have? Because you get rangers talking, we could go on.
You have about 20, or like if we want to leave a few minutes for questions, probably about 15 minutes, a good 15 minutes.
Perfect. So I'm gonna jump in for a little bit. The thing about this national park is if you think about national parks, that idea and that concept, so many people do think of places like Yellowstone. They think of the Grand Canyon, Yosemite National Park in California, these vast open spaces with these awe-inspiring vistas, the mountains, the canyons. The St. Croix Park is more intimate. It's the kind of place that will reach out and touch you in ways that you really don't expect. It's a very intimate, serene, personal kind of national park that you really discover with spending time out there. One of the best ways is to get out and paddle the river, either in a canoe or a kayak. The Namekagon River is seen here, twists and winds and turns. It's really narrow. In a lot of its length, you can actually just throw a rock from one shore to the next. It is a great place for family groups to get out and paddle because it's relatively easy water. It is a place where we have youth groups that come year after year after year. And we hear from people how they grew up paddling the St. Croix and the Namekagon. And now they're bringing their children back or their grandchildren back. So it's one of these places that when you really get to know, it kind of sticks in the back of your head and crawls in close to your heart. And it's the kind of place that you really want to see again and again and again. It's a place that has an amazing fishery and has for well over 100 years. We have 96 different species of fish in the St. Croix and Namekagon combined. Any fish species you can find in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you're going to find in the St. Croix or the Namekagon. At the headwaters of the Namekagon, it is a cold water fishery. It is fed by springs, and that's the perfect conditions, the perfect habitat for trout. This is a big brown trout that we found during a survey several years back on the Namekagon River. The river warms up in places, so you have species like largemouth bass that will hide in some of the deeper, slower pools. You'll find smallmouth bass in fast stretches of waters where you've got ripples and boulders. They love that rock habitat. You'll find species like catfish living in deep water, deep, slow-moving water. you can find catfish, you can find muskie in some of these deep pools. You can even find bigger muskie in some of these deep pools of water. Species such as the sturgeon, the lake sturgeon, live in the St. Croix. The state of Minnesota is actually conducting surveys now. They're conducting research where they are putting small tags on sturgeon, and they have a catch and release season. So you can go out fishing for sturgeon. You can't keep them, but if you find a tag, you can go online and you can see the history of where that sturgeon was released, where it's been caught. You can enter your data. So you're actually taking part in research, studying the habits of the lake sturgeon. And let me tell you, there are some big sturgeon in the St. Croix and Namekagon. In fact, Namekagon is an Ojibwe word which means place of the sturgeon. The Ojibwe people knew how significant the sturgeon was to that area. And so they called it the Namekagon River, or the place of the sturgeon river. So it's a river that really is intimate. Even if there's other people out there, quite often in places on the Namekagon and the upper St. Croix, they're out of sight around the next bend. It's extremely pristine. There are very few homes. The further you get from the Twin Cities, it becomes more and more remote. It's not actually a wilderness, but it's very wilderness-like. Ben?
Yes. Well, thank you. Yeah, and definitely a great time of year to get out now out on the rivers. Spring. This is actually a summer photo of the Riverway, but it's definitely the time right now that people are coming into the area, springtime, to enjoy the colors and really take part in some of the recreational opportunities. If you get down out from the Namekagon River and going further down, this is an area in the Dalles in Taylor's Falls and St. Croix Falls. The river boats, they make little guided trips up and down the river. People get out again on kayaks and explore this river. The river at this point is much wider. It's not as narrower as it was back up in the upper part or upper reaches of the river. Here the river is a little bit wide and open, spacious. There's sand islands out there. Great place for drawing your canoe or your boat up onto a sandy beach and kind of relax and take in the beauty, take in the stillness of the area. A lot of people, as they come out this way, they like to camp, and they like to take advantage of the campgrounds that are located along the riverway. Anytime you find that we've got a number of them all scattered about. They all have this brown sign with a little tent symbol on it. You notice the number right below that tent symbol. It says N29.2. That's known as the Namekagon, and that number is the mile marker or river mile marker. Just kind of gives you an indication of where you're at on the Namekagon River. But anytime you see a brown little sign like that, that's indicating the campsite. And these campsites right off the river, place you can draw your boat right up onto land. Those campsites have a tent pad. They also have a place for you to have a campfire. Boy, I just looking at that picture, Dale, I can just smell the smoke.
I'm ready.
And having a little s'more activity going on for sure. But definitely a place that people can just pull their boats off and enjoy the scenery, the stillness, the quietness, the beauty of nature.
So I'll throw in, the Namekagon River is 100 miles long. It's solely in Wisconsin. The St. Croix, what we manage is about 130 miles of the St. Croix River. A lot of it is the border between the two states. Along those two rivers, we manage there's around 150 water access campsites. So you could actually plan an easy one-night overnight trip, or you could take a trip up to 7 or 8 days, paddling day after day and finding a campsite and sleeping under the stars. So this is a long, narrow park. We don't have hundreds of thousands of acres of land adjacent to the rivers that we manage. It's very narrow strips of land, but there's around 150 campsites that you can choose from, and there's no charge for those. Those are free campsites. They're first come, first serve. So if you see one that's open, there's nobody there, you pull over, that is your tent site, your camping site for the night. Again, we have people that year after year, this is an adventure that they come to, and these campsites are there for you guys to enjoy in the future.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely. And these are, we have visitor centers. These are places that people can go to learn more about the park. And as Dale had mentioned, as far as trip planning, you want to if you're interested in getting out on the river, but you're not really sure what to do or where to go to a visitor center, and we can point you in the way. But so this is the St. Croix River Visitor Center in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. Step inside and be greeted by a smiling ranger to help you with directions.
And realize all these pictures are prior to the current pandemic. I look at some of these today and I just kind of say, wow, someday we'll get back. We still do have to wear masks in our visitor centers, but they are waiting for you to come and enjoy. We are open this summer. This is my visitor center, my little public visitor center in Trigo, Wisconsin. It's on the Namekagon River. If you're familiar with Spooner, Wisconsin, or Hayward, Wisconsin, it's along the river up in that part of Wisconsin. It likewise will be open this summer. We're thinking 5 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And same kind of thing. You can get trip planning information. We've got exhibits about the St. Croix and Namekagon River. You can even become a junior ranger. You can get dressed up like a French voyageur and learn about the lives of the fur traders and become one of our new junior rangers for the National Park Service.
Yes, and so as Dale had mentioned, is that in the past we've done lots of outreach to schools and working with schools, but because of COVID, it certainly changed how we had to do programs. And so this past summer, we created virtual programs and providing opportunities that schools and classes can learn about the park virtually. But we do have our Junior Ranger program that's available. It's for kids that come out and learn about the park and to be a steward, to be kind of a junior ranger in a way, to help share the information about this parkway to their friends and family, but also help to protect this amazing resource we have. And so as Dale, this is Ranger Dale, he's showing off some of the unique critters that are found in the Riverway, but definitely a place to come and enjoy and learn and discover. How about that?
So Dan and I could spend hours talking to you guys about this park. I have worked here. This will be my 25th year working at this park. And I've got to tell you, I learned something new pretty much every week. It's no surprise. I find out fascinating facts or details or discover new places along this 230-mile park. And it is something that as an agency, the National Park Service is charged with protecting and enhancing. But we're a very limited staff. If you think about 230 miles of two rivers, Dan and I are really the only two educators that we have here. We have our own law enforcement staff, but again, 230 miles. We have our own maintenance staff that tries to get out and clean all the campsites, 150 campsites, clean all of our landings, places you get on and off the river, clean picnic areas. The big question is, what is the responsibility of our visitors? The people that are using this place today and will use it into the future. What can you do? And it's simple things. If you think about it, if you think about your local city park or county park, you guys use those places. You have since you've been young. You're using them today, perhaps. You guys are equal partners in protecting those so that younger children can use them in the future. As you get older, those responsibilities increase to some extent. You become the stewards, the caretakers of state parks that you visit, and also the national parks that you visit. Last year, in particular, national parks, national forests, wilderness areas, state parks received a lot of growth, people going outside and discovering these places. So part of your job is to be prepared, know what to expect when you get there. Try to avoid the busy places. In fact, I like avoiding busy places on my day off because I get as much out of these rivers, I think, as anybody does, and I like the peace and quiet. There's one stretch of the St. Croix River from near Taylor's Falls and St. Croix Falls downstream. From there, on a busy day in June, you might have as many as 1,000 canoes in one hot day in June. It's close to the Twin Cities. It gets a lot of use, and it's how people like to enjoy it. They have historically. But you can find places that reduces the impact, reduces how people interact with the river, and actually helps if we don't have as many people in one small place. So finding out of the way places to visit, picking up after yourself. This is one of our landings after a busy day where people just leave all of their rental gear behind. The outfitters eventually will clean it up, but trying to plan a trip that is low impact, meaning you leave nothing but footprints, you take nothing but pictures, so that the next generation has something equally as beautiful to enjoy. This is near Stillwater, Minnesota, on the river. It's a very popular weekend spot. Unfortunately, people that camp and recreate here have a tendency of leaving garbage behind. It's something as simple as taking out what you bring in. Pack it in, pack it out is how we refer to it. And some of our staff do spend time in this area every summer just picking up all of the litter that's left behind. Volunteering to help clean up some of this stuff. National parks are areas that are always looking for volunteers, and that's not something that's age dependent. You don't have to be an older person to do it. So volunteering to assist with river cleanups or other programs at the park goes a long way into ensuring that these places stay the beautiful places they are today, so that 15, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years from now, those next generations will have the opportunity to enjoy these places.
Wow, what a...
Yes.
Oh, I just want to say we have a few minutes left, and we had a couple questions, so didn't want to interrupt, but that's a beautiful picture.
We're at the end of our program. We put a couple of slides in here, a couple of images. This is a morning photograph on the Namekagon River, early morning paddle with some people. The river is, the park is open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Obviously, daytime is when most people visit. So whether it's the early morning, it's sunset in the evening, or finding a place just to look at the night skies. This park is in your backyard. It was created with all of you in mind, so that you have the opportunity now and in the future to enjoy its special nature and get a chance to not just enjoy it, but protect it. And again, as I said, on Earth Day, I don't think there's any better message that we could share.
I love those pictures, Dale. And you've provoked me to maybe organize a canoe trip along the Namekagon, because I've never done it. Let's see. We have a couple really good questions, and one of them was, what experiences or education is required to become a park ranger?
That is a good question. Dan, do you want to start on that one?
Sure, yes. As far as education goes, I don't know. My background, I have a bachelor's of science in wildlife biology and a master's in environmental education. But then also have lots of different experiences from working, but also from volunteering. The best thing is start volunteering when you're in high school, and then continue that volunteering all the way, even when you even have a job. It's just really good to have such a what we call a well-rounded resume. Is that you're not specializing just in one little thing, you're specializing in lots of different things. So my specialty is plants and animals, but I also love geology. I love astronomy. I like music, poetry, reading, and those kind of things. So yes, I think having a rounded resume is key.
So I have a bachelor's degree in talking, basically communication, but I'll say there's lots of different jobs in the National Park Service. We have research people, scientists, biologists, whose focus on specific aspects of park resources, whether it is plants and vegetation or water resources. We have our own law enforcement. We call it resource protection staff that typically have backgrounds or degrees in some sort of law enforcement. We have maintenance people. This park could not run unless we had a specific group of maintenance employees that take care of all of the campsites. If you come to the park and you find a clean campsite, it's a combination of our maintenance staff doing the work to keep it clean and previous visitors keeping it clean. So there's lots of different types of opportunities to work for the National Park Service.
Well, and it's a team effort to keep it all going. And let's see, we had a couple more real quick. We might go a couple minutes over. If you have to head on out, that's great, but we'll stay around for a couple minutes to answer these. Have you both, I know the answer to this, at least with Dale, but have you both kayaked or canoed down the Namekagon? And if so, share an experience, like a cool one. And then someone did ask, they want to know, what was the strangest animal you've seen on the Namekagon or on the St. Croix?
Why don't you start with the St. Croix?
Yeah, gosh. Let's see. As far as paddling goes, gosh, I'm pretty new to the Riverway, so I have paddled on the Namekagon and have done a little bit on the St. Croix, but not as much as Dale has. Oh my gosh, he could tell you the stories. And probably the most unusual animal. I don't know if there's an unusual animal because I kind of like all animals, the slimy ones to the spiders to the bats and the birds, and I don't know if there's a I don't know. I think maybe scavenger beetles, but yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
How about you, Dale? Dale he's written books, I'm sure.
Of the 233 miles of the two rivers that we manage, I have paddled 232 and a half miles. There's 1/2 mile stretch that I'm getting to this minute.
That's impressive.
Probably the weirdest thing I ever saw was paddling. It was actually down close to the confluence of the St. Croix and Namekagon. I heard a big splash in the water downstream from me. I was in a kayak, and I had my kayak pointed upstream because I was taking pictures. So I finally turned around to check out the splash, and there was a bear, a full-grown black bear, in the water swimming across the river, and it was close enough that I could actually see its paws under the water as it was swimming. And it hadn't noticed me at that point because I was quiet. I was taking pictures. It suddenly noticed me. I've never seen a bear do a 180-degree turn in the water and start paddling the other way. And it just,
oh my gosh.
Moved. And I was grateful it wasn't shallow water. I think I probably scared him as much as he scared me, but that was probably the strangest thing I've ever seen on the river.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think that's a great note to end on, because that might inspire a lot of you listening to this to get out on the St. Croix and Namekagon this summer. And maybe you'll see one of these two gentlemen. So with that, I think we're going to have to end. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for an amazing presentation, as always. Yeah. And
I would like to thank all of the youth that's participating, that took the time to spend with us today. As you get older, you realize that time is the most valuable thing that we have. And I appreciate you taking the time and letting us share a little bit about your park with you today.
And we're getting a lot of thank yous, and I echo that. Thank you all. And we have some really cool things coming up on the stage. So we look forward to having you join us there. And thank you, gentlemen. It was great to see you.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day.
Yeah.